Hey everyone, welcome back to the channel. I'm here with my new daily driver that I'm finally ready to show to you guys. I mentioned this a while back in my Toyota 4Runner video when I was selling that. Go ahead and watch that if you want to see that context about my last daily driver. But now I've got a new one and I'm ready to reveal it here today. This is my car that I've chosen, my 2015 Audi RS5 Coupe finished in Panther Black Crystal Effect paint. So today we're going to talk a little bit about this car, the background about why I chose to buy this as my next daily, what I've done to it since I purchased it earlier this year, and my favorite features, and a little bit more background about the RS5 range. So with that, let's get started. Hope you enjoy. All right, so the 2015 Audi RS5. How did I decide that this was going to be my next daily? Well, there's a few parts to this story. First and foremost, like I mentioned in my last video, I owned my 2004 Toyota 4Runner for about 10 years. Don't get me wrong, I loved it, but it's a long time to have one car, especially as a car enthusiast, right? Many people cycle through cars frequently to get different experiences, if not have multiple cars. I still live in downtown Chicago, so I've only got room for one car at the moment, so I had to find what was going to be the car that suited me to be my next daily all-around car year-round in the Midwest, where we have, you know, rough winters, rough roads, right? So what the first objective for me was that, you know, after owning that 4Runner for so long, I wanted to get back into something that was performance-oriented, that would really put a thrill into me every time I got in and started it and went for a drive. The 4Runner, as great as it was, obviously isn't that. So that pointed me back to German performance vehicles like this. That's always what I've been very much into, from the likes of AMGs, RS cars, M cars, Porsche, right? I spent some time working at dealers throughout my time in high school and college, where I got to experience these brands and really developed an affinity for them. So that takes me to the next part of the story about how I came to this car specifically. So when I was in college, I had a part-time job in Iowa City at a car dealership called Carousel Motors. They had many different brands. Audi and Mercedes were two of them. And I was a service porter in the service department. So that means, you know, you get to drive the cars all around the dealership, you're washing them, you're going on deliveries sometimes to take the cars to customers' houses and back and forth and all that sort of stuff. So that was how I got introduced to this car more intimately, because I would do deliveries a lot as in that job. And I was working there from 2014 to 2015. And if you know a lot about the B8.5 generation of RS5, 2013 through 15 were the only model years that we got of this vehicle here in the North American market. So I don't remember what model year exactly it was, but I remember the story from when I worked there. One of the service advisors came up to me and said, "Hey, we got a delivery for you. You know, they hand me the keys, no big deal. That happens every day." I had seen this car a little bit in the service department here and there, you know, checking it out, and I always thought it was just so beautiful, but I hadn't driven one yet. And then the one day he gives me the keys. It's an RS car. I see that it's, you know, an RS key, so that's exciting, right? You get to drive sometimes like RS3s, or the RS3 wasn't out yet, so maybe it was like, you know, older RS4s and stuff like that, right? Like a B7 RS4. I drove a lot of those, but I hadn't yet driven an RS5. So he gave me the keys, and I go out to the lot, and it's a RS5 coupe, just like this. And I had to drive it about 30 minutes on a delivery, and that was when I first got hands-on driving experience with this car, and I just loved it from the start, right? I mean, the design itself, inside and out, is one thing I just love about this generation of really the entire A5 range in general. But the RS cars, you know, they're just known for their effortless speed, and they sound great. Of course, this has the 4.2 liter naturally aspirated V8, the last iteration that Audi used of that engine in this vehicle, dating back to cars like the original B7 RS4 I mentioned, the Audi R8. And yeah, I just fell in love with it on that 30-minute drive that I went to go deliver it, and I just walked away feeling like, okay, this car's on the list. I have to experience this at some point in my life. And, you know, that was about 10 years ago now, right? So here I am finally getting my hands on one, and it's a super great example, and I'm so excited to have this as my next daily. And, you know, that's maybe the one part that's a bit interesting, is that this is going to be my everyday car, right? And I think that's also what drew me to this option over other German brands, because I always thought of the RS5 as this is kind of the most like GT version of this segment of vehicle, right? When you compare it to an M4 from BMW or Mercedes C63 AMG, that's kind of like the hot rod performance coupe and sedan. And, you know, the M cars are certainly the most, you know, the highest performance or the most dynamic vehicles. This thing is, you know, a little bit heavier, it's front heavy, the engine's a bit far out, so this isn't really a dynamic masterpiece of a vehicle, but it's super comfortable for daily driving purposes, for road trips, for daily use. It has a surprising amount of space, right? It's really roomy inside as a two-door coupe. It's got a large trunk with fold-down seats, and of course, quattro all-wheel drive. So I figured this could be, with all-season tires, a pretty good year-round vehicle to have here in the city. So that's how I came into this, and now we're going to go through some of my modifications and maintenance items that I touched on since I purchased it earlier this year. So this is a pretty much fully stock vehicle, which is how I like my cars. I do a little bit of touch-ups here and there that are really more of like convenience add-ons or like OEM plus items, but I want everything to be as close to stock as possible. I want to feel every time I get in the car like I am going back in time and I am the first owner driving off from the dealership with this car in 2014 or 2015. That's as close as I want to get, as close to that experience as I possibly can. So I'll say first, I bought the car in this condition. It had tinted windows when I bought it, which it's not a choice I would make personally, but whatever, they look fine. They're not peeling. They've been done, well enough. So I'm going to leave that as it stands here on the rear window and side windows that are tinted. Otherwise, there's nothing done to it. You can see it's running the original V-pattern 5-spoke wheels that were part of the black optics package on this particular car. And then all I did to it was I put in Apple CarPlay, again, a convenience add-on that is nice because it actually doesn't change anything with the interior design or structure of the MMI interface and the interior dash or anything. It's a module that basically sits behind where the HVAC controls are that I had installed by a mobile installer, and now I get Apple CarPlay alongside the MMI functionality, which is great because, again, I'm using it every day. I want to be able to have that functionality paired to my phone. So that's really all that's been done to it. Maintenance-wise, I did quite a bit, because I wanted to get this really touched up with everything that it might need. So since I bought it, of course I did all the standard wear and tear items. It needed rear brakes. I put new tires on it, new all-season tires. I did the carbon cleaning service to clean out the intake manifold where all the carbon buildup can collect over the years and sometimes hamper performance a little bit. Oil change, spark plugs, filters, all that usual stuff. Did full drivetrain service with the sport differential and the S-tronic transmission. And it had some little clamps underneath that hold together the exhaust, like in the center mounting area that were rusted. I replaced those. And otherwise, it's running great. It doesn't need anything else, and I don't need to do anything else to it. This paint, also, I love. My favorite color onto the B8.5 Gen RS5, or even just many Audis in general, is Sepang Blue, which is a really cool, vibrant color that they offered. It's hard to find. They didn't bring a lot of those over in the production run of this car in the States, but this might be my second favorite color. It's called Panther Black Crystal Effect, and 95% of the time it just looks black, which is fine because I think this car particularly looks fantastic in black. But it's cool because it has a nice shade or like purple flake in it, so that when you get the sun just in the right light, you have this sort of like midnight purple color coming out from the paintwork, and it looks phenomenal. So that was actually a $1,000 option on this car. I have the original window sticker. These things started around like $71K for the coupe when they were new. This one is optioned up to like $79K. So that's, the paint, the black optic package, which is another thing I really wanted to make sure I got in the RS5 I chose, because you may recognize not just the RS5, but a lot of the RS cars, even through today, they have that signature like brushed aluminum trim on the outside that you'll see around the window trimming. The mirrors are usually in that aluminum. The grille, the lower fascia, like intake and splitter areas, and the exhaust tips. But I actually didn't want that on this car. I think that looks pretty good when you get maybe the more vibrant color like the red or Sepang Blue. But knowing that I wanted this black one, I wanted it to be black all around and have that black optics package. Otherwise, it has, the Audi Tech package, so it has the what's it called? The blind spot monitoring and a few other things that come with that package. The two things it's missing primarily, there was a red brake package that just literally gave you red brake calipers, like $500 extra option. This doesn't have that, and it also doesn't have the Audi driver assist pack, which would come with a few things like dynamic steering and the MMI configuration, and then also, most notably, it would have radar-guided cruise control, which is certainly a good feature to have on a daily. It would be nice to have that. I think that was like an extra $2,000 option package that this one does not have. That being said, it's kind of interesting because it gives you like an aesthetic difference. Obviously, you have to have sensors and such for the radar guided cruise control, right? Nowadays, they're usually a bit better about integrating that into the front end design. On this particular car, what they would do is they would put the radar sensor right here in the passenger side lower cooling vent area here, and it would take up this entire side and be asymmetrical because the driver's side wouldn't have it. So it's immediately noticeable when you find a car that has it, but it does look a bit awkward in my opinion. So I guess I'll take the more symmetrical front end design over that for my particular example. And then let's also pop the hood real quick and take a look at that engine. It also has the optional carbon fiber engine cover, which I think may have been in this model year included in the black optic package as well. So there it is. And you know, fully stock, like I said, no performance modifications, no tunes. I don't plan to do anything to it. I want it to be the pure experience of this engine from when it was new. So that's what we have here. The 4.2 liter naturally aspirated V8 makes about 450 horsepower, 317 pound-feet of torque, tops out at around 178 miles an hour, 0 to 60 in like 4.4 seconds. And of course, going through quattro all-wheel drive, and the RS5s were only offered in the S-Tronic 7-speed dual-clutch transmission. So no manual, you know, that would be cool. You could get the S5 from this generation with a manual transmission. I drove lots of those back at the dealership too. But the RS, much like today, they only offer in the dual-clutch transmission. So anyway, the other thing I did, a cosmetic really enhancement, not necessarily a modification, full front PPF, just to protect this phenomenal paint, which is in exceptional condition for the fact that this car has not, well, I bought it with 88,000 miles on it. It now has about 92,000 miles, but inside and out, it looks outstanding for that mileage. The paint is, I can't say it's flawless. There's some clear coat scratches you'll find towards the rear and on the sides, but the front looks great. So, you know, I wanted to maintain that look from rock chips and such that I will certainly be collecting as I drive this more frequently as a daily driver. So yeah, full PPF on the front, full carbon ceramic coat, or ceramic coating, of course, to protect the longevity of the paint and the clear coat as well throughout the year. The wheels are, I think, my favorite wheels that they offered on the RS5. You're probably familiar with what they would call like the 5-arm rotor design that you could get in sort of a shade of graphite like this, or the more like aluminum look, or a black one that was also offered in earlier model years, I think, for the black optics package. But these are my favorite. I think they look phenomenal. No intention of changing the wheel design either. So let's talk about what I love about this car. Well, I love the sound. You know, when you put it in dynamic mode, that V8 sings. It loves to rev high and rev fast, and it just, you know, from startup to just cruising around to putting the hammer down, the exhaust sounds phenomenal. Love that engine. And you know, it hugs the road, right? Like I said, this isn't gonna outperform an M4 or something like that, but it feels great. And let's take a look inside real quick. Again, like I mentioned, the interior is in pretty great shape. There's just some creasing on the driver's side bolster of the seat. Otherwise, it's fantastic. I love this generation of Audi interiors. I think they did such a great job. It's so easy to use. This is before the eras of touchscreens, but you have all the MMI controls there in the center that, you know, help you just quickly navigate everything in the MMI or Apple CarPlay while you're driving around. And it's really just a nice setup. So the other thing on the interior I did want to mention real quick, if you come around here, you can see I added these little RS5 stickers that are applied into basically the headrest area on both seats to color, you know, add color to the RS5 logos, basically. They didn't come like that. They came just flat with the same leather color from the factory, which I always thought was kind of weird because nowadays on like these types of cars or M cars, they have like a color or backlit logo in the seat. So just a little tiny touch from an Instagram account where you can buy these types of stickers for any RS car for like 30 bucks. So I added those, and I think they look pretty nice. And then I got WeatherTech floor mats, you know, again, with it being a daily, want that to protect the carpets and such. Otherwise, interior's in great shape, fully stock, and we can talk more about some of my favorite features. Rear spoiler. People always kind of forget that the RS5 did have an active rear spoiler that deploys automatically at 75 miles an hour. Manually can be engaged from the interior, of course, too, for cleaning or just show-off purposes, right? But that's kind of cool. Always fun to see that deploying when you're driving around. And then the other surprising thing again, with this being my daily, is despite it being a coupe, that's the least practical part about it. I've yet to have anyone in the back seat. They're not great, right, for long distances, obviously. But despite the interior, impractical elements like that, with it being a two-door four-seater, the rear cargo area is actually pretty generous. The trunk is really big. You got a nice cargo net. You got a thing here you can flip up for more space under there where the spare tire kit is and such. And you've got little grocery hooks, which I found surprising. Wasn't expecting that, so that's kind of cool if you're carrying stuff around. The rear seats also fold down, and there's a gear tunnel. So even if you don't want to go through folding down both seats from the rear bench, you can get some longer items through the pass-through there. So yeah, some nice little practical benefits there within the trunk. And then otherwise, there's nothing too crazy or weird about this car with its functionality and features. I honestly think my favorite part about it is just how it looks. The 8.5 Gen RS5 particularly, I think might be the best looking Audi of the last 15, almost 20 years maybe, outside of, I guess, the R8. But it's really just a phenomenal car. I mean, there's not a bad angle on it. You look at these rear box flares, the stance of it, it just looks so perfect, yet understated at the same time. And I think that's something that some of the newer RS or even just general performance vehicles from other German brands in this class have sort of lost touch with a little bit these days. The RS6 Avant, the RS7, they look big, wide, hulky vehicles with massive wheels and, optional aero kits and such. And, this was kind of a different approach. If you didn't really know your cars, or even if you were just semi-familiar with Audi, you might look at this and just think it's a really nice A5 or maybe an S5. There's not a whole lot. You got a badge in the grill and a badge at the back, but if you ignore that or don't notice it and you're just looking at it from the side, it just looks kind of stealthy, especially in black. And these wheels, again, they look great, but they're not like super shouty. And I love that. I think they just executed this design so well. And the other thing that's so unique about owning this car now that I think a lot of people didn't really appreciate back when it was new or recently introduced is the rare factor of this thing. This is basically in the sector of, like I mentioned earlier, BMW M4s and AMG C63 coupes. Well, guess what? They made tens of thousands of those. The RS5 in the North American market, the coupe specifically, they delivered about, I don't know the exact number, but it's under 3,000, like around 2,800 or so. And then you had the cab, which I never see the cab. I'm not a convertible guy, so I don't really care too much about those. But they did bring the cab over for the same model years. But the coupe is it's so rare. I never see these. When I see one at a car show or an Audi Cars and Coffee, it's always exciting because you just don't see them. They only brought them over for those 3 model years. In Europe, when they introduced the B8 Gen A5 range, they did bring the RS5 out for, I think, the 2010 model year, which was the pre-facelift car that they were selling over there. But then they didn't bring it over to the States until the 8.5 refresh generation that started here in 2013. And then that gen actually went through, I think, 2016, but the RS we only got for those 3 model years. And then later the B9 gen came out in 2017. RS5 later returned as a coupe, a sportback, and a cab. Or actually, no, you know what? They didn't make a cab of the B9. They only made the coupe and sportback. They had the cab for this gen only. I do think the new B9 RS5 sportbacks actually look pretty good. But oddly enough, I think the coupes of that gen look worse than this one. So that's what made me go for this. Those also, of course, were, they had similar performance, but they changed over to a twin turbo V6 instead of this naturally aspirated V8. So yeah, it's really just, for me, the experience of the car, the sound, the design, the rarity, and the fact that it makes a great daily, all put together such a great package that speaks to what I love about this class of vehicle. So I'm not sure, really what else I have planned for it. Like I said, I don't plan to make any other changes. It doesn't really need anything else cosmetically or mechanically. It's higher in mileage, so we'll see what comes with that. These are thankfully known to be pretty reliable powertrains, with some of the issues, from what I've heard, really just coming from transmission faults, some cooling challenges that, from what I've heard, were primarily isolated into the earlier model year RS5s from like 13 and 14. Part of why I wanted to go for the final model year 15, which also included some other software upgrades and cosmetic, upgrades and stuff like that. So this is the final model of your car, and it's running great, no faults, no engine codes, nothing. So we'll see how it does, and I'll keep you guys updated. But it also came with an extended warranty when I purchased it. That's good for about another 10 months. So that's nice, you know, anything that comes from that will be covered. It's actually already paid for itself. Of course, I didn't pay for it, the past owner did. I don't think I'll extend it, but it already replaced, it put like a $3,500 job into replacing the front rearward control arms that were, the bushings were starting to leak a little bit, so it got those replaced right when I bought it. And then another common point of failure on the interior, unfortunately, there is a manual sunshade in there that covers the sunroof that busted and was like stuck in place and starting to rip. A really obnoxious job to do that a lot of shops don't really want to do. Warranty covered that, about $5 grand through an Audi dealer. So I'll take it. Now it's got a fully functioning sunshade thanks to that warranty. So like I said, we'll see what else it covers, if there's really a need to extend it. I don't know. But I feel pretty confident. You know, I see some of these up in the higher miles that are doing good, and I'm going to take great care of it, obviously, and make sure it gets everything it needs. And, you know, I think it'll make a great daily for years to come. And then we'll see what else I want to include in the garage or replace this with. But I'll be sure to do some more content with this car as things change or as new things come up with it. But for now, this is a first look at my new daily, the 2015 RS5, and hope you enjoyed it. Thanks for watching. I'll see you next time.